About a month ago, you might remember I asked AI to create a drawing of Jesus as a sheep and a drawing of Jesus as Rambo. And the nice thing about artificial intelligence is that it didn't judge me the way that all of you are secretly judging me right now. What a weird thing to do. Is this what the church pays Tim to do all day? Well, the reason that I did this was to compare two ways that Christians have understood Jesus in the book of Revelation. On the one hand, Jesus is portrayed as a little lamb that was slain, which reflects Jesus' liberating way of love. On the other hand, the vast majority of Christian teaching for hundreds of years has taught us that when Jesus returns, he'll be like, that meek and mild stuff didn't work the first time, so now I'm here to kill people and destroy the world. Awesome. And for the most part, Christian pastors, teachers, and theologians to this day are like, sure, makes total sense. And apparently, AI also thinks that it makes sense because instead of giving me two separate images to compare, it gave me the Jesus Rambo sheep that is mashed together in your bulletin. And I think the reason why this insane mashup has been embraced within Christianity is because that Christianity joined forces with empires and then adopted the empire's way of conquering, dividing, corrupting, and killing. We justify this, however, by saying, well, yes, God is loving, but God is also just. Okay. Well, let's read some of what we have from Revelation chapter 8 and 9, and you can tell me what you think, if this sounds just. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were hurled to the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the water because it was made bitter or toxic. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light was darkened, a third of the day was kept from shining, and likewise the night. Then in chapter 9, the fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss, and out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions on the earth to destroy, torture, and kill. Yada, yada, yada. Whew, okay. Now remember, the seven trumpets is a repeat of the seven seals, but from a different angle or a different perspective. So the seven seals highlight destruction in society and on politics or from a political perspective, while the trumpets highlight destruction and the impact on the environment. So, if God is responsible for all of this social and environmental chaos, death, and destruction, is God just? Because it looks like it's just random. I say no. Because I think that John is trying to make clear that the injustice is coming from, it was it was amazing listening to the kids. Like, what children's moment are you like, what was life like? And somebody's like, the Roman Empire, right? Like, incredible. So I think John also, along with our children, was trying to make clear that the Roman Empire and the way of empire in general is causing all of this. John is wanting us to see that the way of the Lamb, the way of Jesus, is not the same as the way of Rome, which means that we shouldn't mash these two together. So, why do I think that the way of empire is responsible for all of this? Well, because of the falling stars. The great star falling from heaven that turned the water toxic. And in chapter 9, the falling star who unleashes a whole new level of horror by opening the abyss. Let me put it this way. My wife and I were together with a bunch of other pastors on a guided tour of the ancient Greek city of Corinth, which 2,000 years ago had a small Christian community that the Apostle Paul wrote letters to, which is why we have 1st and 2nd Corinthians in our Bibles. So that tour guide all day was like Bible, 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 Paul, 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 blah, blah, blah. And by the afternoon, our whole group was just tuned out and exhausted. And then the tour guide was like, do you see that mountain or that hill just outside the city? We don't care. No more words, no more stories. We're tired. Can we just get back on the bus and go home and have dinner? I mean, I didn't say that out loud, but I said it in my head and probably also with my face. Undeterred, the tour guide continued, legend has it that this is the hill that inspired the Greek myth of Sisyphus. And immediately, we all were alert and interested again. Then he said, now it's getting late, so we can stay in the museum longer, if you like, or we can hike to the top of that hill. And we were all in agreement, we have to do the hike. So when we arrived, we were told that the trail was closing in 15 minutes. So I immediately picked up a stone from the ground and started running up the trail. And behind me, a large group of pastors. When I got to the top, I took a moment to breathe, and then I put the stone down on the ground, and without the stone, I returned to the bottom, feeling this incredible sense of joy and satisfaction. The end. Now, this is a true story, and honestly, a boring story. Except, because I briefly mentioned Sisyphus, there is this whole other layer of depth and meaning to the story that reveals something about me and apparently how a lot of pastors feel about our profession, and perhaps how a lot of you feel about your own experiences in life. So even though I didn't say it explicitly, the reason why we responded in this way is because sometimes being a pastor feels like being Sisyphus, eternally pushing this boulder up the hill only to have it fall back down again and having to start over. Every Tuesday, I start reading, writing, erasing, editing, praying through blood, sweat, and tears. I'm pushing this sermon up the hill, no matter how good or how bad it is, until I get to Sunday when I stand in front of all of you and I give the sermon, and then we all go home. And then on Tuesday, I start all over again at the bottom. Allusion, Allusion, is a literary or storytelling tool where the author makes a small reference to an entirely different story that they assume the audience will notice and understand. And if the reader does notice, this then reveals something deeper and richer about the characters and where the story is going and what the story is trying to tell us without actually telling us. So, when John keeps referring to these stars that are falling out of the sky, that are a part of this environmental apocalypse, he assumes that his audience will understand completely the literary reference. The problem for us is that after 2,000 years, that reference has been lost on us. Fortunately, 15 minutes ago, Nikki read from Isaiah 14, which includes the reference, "How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn." Who? What is this morning star? Verse 4, it is the king of the Babylonian Empire. The empire is the oppressor. The empire is destroying the physical world, so much so that when Babylon collapses, the whole earth breaks out in song, and the trees sing, "Since Babylon has fallen, no one comes to cut us down." The song of celebration. You see, at different points in the Bible, there is this understanding, this belief that kings and rulers and leaders are in this elevated position of power so that they can lead their nations with compassion, with justice, and with peace. That's their task. That's our task in any position of power or leadership. But for empires, being as high as the stars is not enough. So the king of Babylon says, "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars. I will take God's place, ruling over the divine council. I will make myself like the Most High." It's all right there in Isaiah 14. And John assumes that this is obvious. He's alluding to the oppressive impact of the Babylonian Empire as a way of saying, in his time and place, Caesar is the same. Rome is just like any empire. It's not Jesus. Pain and suffering comes from this human need to endlessly ascend. This desire for infinite economic growth, infinite power, infinite control, infinitely ascending higher and higher has caused, is causing, and will cause suffering. And eventually, such inequality will cause us to collapse under our own weight. It's how empires work. So as followers of Jesus living in today's modern empire, this is not our way. This is not who we are. The way of the Lamb is the way of the Lord in Isaiah 14, to give rest from pain and turmoil and the harsh labor that is forced upon people, to give rest from the pain and the turmoil and the harsh labor that is placed upon people. The way of the Lamb is to allow the earth, our physical world, to experience rest and quiet so that it too will break out in song as life and love are able to grow and to flourish. So one of the ways that we practice the way of the Lamb in worship when we gather together is that when I'm done preaching, or anyone else who is preaching finishes, when you've all heard more than enough words and you have more than enough ideas to think about, we have this moment for musical meditation or prayer where we can just take a deep breath, where we can receive something that is good and beautiful through music. And we can just rest before moving forward. So we do this, we receive this as a gift so that we learn how, with our lives and with our actions, to give this gift, to give the gift of peace and rest to those around us. So that as we receive the gift of rest and quiet, we are able to give this gift to others, and we are able to give this gift to our physical world. Please join me in prayer. Jesus, may your gift of healing rest come to us, come for us, and be experienced through us. Amen.